And what we've been doing is kind of looking at different themes of Christmas, which we said last week, sometimes in this kind of cultural holiday of Christmas, it's hard to see the Christian story in the Christmas story, which is ironic because it is like Christmas is like it's the birth of Jesus. But we've taken all these things, we borrowed little elements from different parts of culture and different celebrations and said, hey, this is ours. This is going to be part of our celebration or whatever. And one of the things, we're looking at them and we're saying, hey, how do we reconcile this with Christmas? Should we just say like, no, it's about the birth of Jesus, no trees, no lights, no whatever. And we're talking about, no, it's appropriate. Jesus comes to the earth to bring us peace. He comes to the earth, and the way that he's going to bring us peace is he's going to reconcile everything to himself. He says, everything was made by me and for me, and it functions best when it functions in the way that I made it, for the reasons that I made it. And so he's reconciling everything to himself. And so from my point of view, it's appropriate to reconcile different things back to Jesus' story. One of the things that's huge in Christmas is the food. How many people love the holiday season because you love the food? You're like, oh yeah, man, it's time. It's time. Like, get out my stretchy jeans, my jeggings, right? And you're gonna have some food. How many people? So I know that there's different foods that people like, and this is really shocking to me that there are foods that people like, and I don't know if you're like this too, but I'm always shocked when someone likes something I don't like. And I'm like, I don't understand what's happening there. For me, like Brussels sprouts. Like people are like, oh my gosh, Brussels sprouts. And I'm like, Brussels sprouts. You know what I mean? And I'm always shocked when it's like that. But it's like that even with Christmas food. For instance, how many people raise your hand if you enjoy yourself some eggnog? Where's my eggnog people, right? Okay, raise them high, look around. Everybody look around. These are the eggnog people. Now watch this. Put your hands down. Raise your hand if you not only don't care for eggnog, like, it's not my thing, but you're like actively like, oh, eggnog. Raise your hand if that's you, right? That's amazing. I'm like, but eggnog is so good. And actually, we found this one. It's made by a company called Strauss, and they make like a lot of organic milk and all these kind of things like that. And it's the best eggnog I've ever had. It comes like in a glass bottle, so it makes me feel like I'm in the 60s. It's awesome. So you're like, weren't you born in the 60s? No, I was not. Stop it. In any event, so eggnog is a good one. How many people, here's one. How many people like peppermint? Raise your hand if you like peppermint, okay? Look around, see who likes peppermint, right? Put your hands down. How many people do not like peppermint? You're like, absolutely. Okay, those of you with your hands up real quick. What about peppermint bark, though? Even peppermint bark? No, what? See, that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's shocking to me. It's shocking. Is there anybody, and this is a huge tradition, but is there really anybody in the world who has ever eaten a fruitcake? Raise your hand if you've ever. Seriously? Did you like it, though? No, raise your hand. Keep your hand up if you ate a fruitcake and liked it. Okay, so look around and see, like, those are the weird people. Like, now you know. Like, I don't mean it in a mean way. I just mean it like, in every church, there's always weird people, and now you know who they are. So in any event, but food is a huge tradition in Christmas, and you almost kind of like, it's like, should it be that way? Like, here's Jesus, and he's coming to save us from our souls, and we're like, yeah, let me just get fat, right? Should gluttony be a part of Christmas, right? But I wanted to talk about that idea. How do we reconcile that idea back to Christmas? And so this morning we're going to do a couple of things a little bit different. I'm going to talk about some things that you're going to like, that's not the way I see it, which I totally understand. I always say things to people and they're like, that's not the way I see it. And I always just walk away and go like, well, you're wrong. But in any event, we're going to pray this morning because this morning we're going to talk about some things. We're going to do some things a little bit different. Later we're going to celebrate and receive communion. So take some time right now to just open your hearts to Christ. Open your hearts to this season. I know some of you are like, I love Christmas and I love Christmas music and all the decorations. And some of you are like, you're the Grinch. And you're like, I hate Christmas music and the decorations and there's people everywhere and I can't find parking and blah, blah. Take some time to just like put off the holiday Christmas and think about the remembrance of what it is that Jesus came for you. That God left heaven for you. take some time right now and invite God into this space with you. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for being with us. We thank you that you're not just a God who says, oh, I'm with you, and I'm everywhere, and so, yeah, I'm always there. But you're a God who actually, you came for us. You left heaven, you left perfection to come to the brokenness, to get into the dirt and save us and fix us and fix it. We lose that sometimes during the Christmas season, Father, because it's just kind of eclipsed. We're overwhelmed by all the holiday stuff, secular ideas, secular thoughts, and even some of the Christian thoughts. We're just overwhelmed, and we forget to just sit in awe that an incomprehensible God became a human being capable of being tempted, capable of being tortured, willing to give up his life for us, for the broken. Father, just wash over us with that thought. Remind us that you are here with us. And Father, let us share in your giddiness for this season. Bless this time. We ask these things for your glory and in Jesus' name. And all God's people said, Amen. All right, I invite you to turn to Luke chapter 2, and we are going to read just a portion of the Christmas story. This is about how Jesus was born. And many of you already know this story, some of you don't, but love to read it during the Christmas season. And so here's this, starting in verse 1. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria. Real quick, interestingly, this is one of the things when people look and say, like, there's a lot of things that happen in the Bible that you're like, can I believe that? That's kind of crazy. That's kind of out there. That's kind of blah, 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 right? You think that's kind of fairy tale-ish, and it's absolutely true. We're going to talk about that next week. But here's the thing. The way that the Bible is written, people who are not just biblical scholars, but literary scholars would tell you, this is unusual. This is unusual. Like for us now, it's not unusual to have, like you pad your story with a bunch of facts that makes it seem a lot more real. They didn't do that back in this day. These are the things that literary scholars look at and say, man, there's got to be, even if I don't believe, there's got to be some truth to what's written here because they're writing history, they're not writing a story. This is unusual for the time when they say, like, this guy was governor and this thing was happening and this other thing happened. It was not while this guy was doing it, but while this guy was doing it. They're writing history. So just a little note for you guys. Next slide. And everyone went to their own town to register. So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem in the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. Next slide. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. Now, I've told you this before. It's really funny. This TV is really dim. I'm trying to read it, and I'm like, I'm old. Like that TV I can see like super bright, and my eyes are like this one. I'm like, I think it says some stuff there. I've told you this before, and this is a little bit embarrassing, especially as a pastor, but I never knew what a manger was. Like I'm singing these songs, I'm reading these verses. I always just thought, because my association with a manger was always a picture of Jesus in this little bed that was made perfect size for a little baby Jesus, right? And so I thought a manger was probably like a cute French word for like, baby bed. Or something like that. Oh, she placed him in the baby bed because there's no room in the inn or something like that. It wasn't until later that Elizabeth explained to me, having grown up on a farm, a manger is a feeding trough. Thanks. Smart Alec Church. Yeah, that's right. That's correct. You're an idiot. Thank you. I didn't know. A manger is a feeding trough, and it's so ironic that Jesus would be born and placed in that feeding trough, and for good reason. Later on in his life, Jesus would say this, found in John. It says, then Jesus declared, I am the bread of life. I am the bread of life. He's telling people, I'm the bread of life. Now listen, what you have to know for later in communion and now, bread in the Jewish culture, it wasn't like they only lived on bread. It's not like they just ate bread. But bread was a symbol for sustenance. Bread was a symbol for food. So he says, I'm what keeps you alive. I'm what you're supposed to feed on. So this idea that he's born and he's placed in a manger, that's not just some random thing that happens. From the beginning, God is setting him up and saying, you're the one. You're the bread of life. You're the one that gives life. You're the one that you're the nutrients. You're the one that makes people healthy. Have you ever seen someone that doesn't eat and you're like, you don't look good, you look unhealthy? Have you ever had to tell someone like, look, you lost a lot of weight, but you don't look good, you look unhealthy? Because food gives you health, if you eat the right stuff. And so he says, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. All the time, people miss what Jesus is saying because people are like, but wait a minute, I'm thirsty now. I'm hungry now. I was hungry yesterday, and I'm a Christian. And we miss because Jesus is making these spiritual connections. He's talking spiritually and connecting things back symbolically to elements that you and I know and understand and can touch and feel, because it's hard for us sometimes to grasp the spiritual. So he says, I'm the bread of life. I was born that way. It's that way going through life, and I'm going to die to become the bread of life. Jesus was born to be our nourishment, to be what sustains us. Anybody ever it's like, yeah, I got to do that thing, but first I got to eat. I got to get my energy up. Anybody? You're like, yeah, I've got this task to do, but first I got to eat. I got to get some. Anybody ever when you don't eat, you're like, I need something, right? Yeah. Jesus was born to be our nourishment, our energy, our sustenance, what we become. How many people are old enough that you remember back in Cartoon Saturdays, that little thing that would come on and it would always tell you, you are what you eat. Anybody old enough to remember that? You are what you eat. Yeah, what you eat literally becomes you. And Jesus is like, that's me. I was born to be your meal. We're going to talk about that. And this is what I want us to associate with when you look at all these Christmas snacks and meals and you're gorging yourself and blah, blah, blah. How many people you already have a kitchen full of stuff that you walk by and you're like, oh, I'll take one of those and I'll have one of that, right? Yeah, absolutely. One of the best parts of Christmas, you just get to eat and nobody can say anything about all the weight you're gaining because it's the holidays. And they have to be nice to you. You are what you eat. One of the first things that Jesus is saying is, as God places him in this manger, Jesus is saying, next slide, I want to be your comfort food. I want to be your comfort food. How many people, this is church, be honest, how many people eat not because you're hungry sometimes, but because you're like, you know what, this will make me feel better, right? How many people, raise them high, you guys are so ashamed. You're like, okay. Comfort food. Jesus, I want to be your comfort food. That's one of the things that we do in Christmas. Christmas food is not it's not energy food. It's not healthy food. It's comfort food. You're like Elizabeth and I were watching a TV show last night, and she was like, hey, do you want a hot chocolate? Now, you don't drink a hot chocolate. You're like, oh my gosh, you know what? I need to get my nutrients up. I'm going to do some stuff. You drink a hot chocolate just because there's a lot of sugar in it, and it tastes like chocolate. She's like, do you want a hot chocolate? And I'm going to be honest with you. We had just eaten dinner. I was full. But guess what my answer was? Yes, I want a hot chocolate. Why even ask the question? Bring me the hot chocolate. And here's the thing as you associate Jesus with these ideas. Jesus wants to be your comfort food. He wants to be who you go to when you're like, I just don't feel, something needs to make me feel right. And a lot of us, we do. We go to, you ever it's like, I'm having a bad day. What can I eat? How many people have ever said, you know what? It's okay. I'm going to eat the whole cake because it's been a tough week, right? We do that. We have this idea of comfort food, and we go to things, we go to food to give us comfort. It's like, listen, Nothing has made me feel good this far. Everybody's treating me wrong. I'm getting all the red lights. The bills are due. It's raining, blah, blah, blah. These cookies will make me feel better, right? Sam runs a whole business based on that idea. Comfort food. We go to food to comfort us. And Jesus is saying, I want to be that food. I want to be what you go to when you're in trouble, when you're struggling, when you don't feel right. I want to be who you go to. I want to be what you go to. Some of us, it's like we go to our self-help books. We go to friends like, hey, what do you think about this? What should I do about this? Or we go to people, it's like, have you ever, I don't know how to, you ever been embarrassed about something you did or said or whatever, and you're like, man, I don't feel right about this. I don't feel good about this. And so you go to people that you know, it's like, you'll tell me that I was right about it. I know I wasn't right about it, but because you're nice, you'll tell me. Like I would go to Sunny. Your daughter. Sunny's super, every time she enters a room, it just is super bright. She's just so full of joy that it makes you feel joyful. If I ever did something wrong, which hasn't happened yet, but if I ever do, I would go to Sunny and be like, hey, this happened. I know Sunny would be like, oh, it's okay, Pastor Michael. You do so many good things. It's all right. It's a blah, blah, blah. We go to people for comfort, even when we know we're wrong. Nowadays, we go to social media for comfort. We're like, man, I'm really upset because some people have this idea and I have this idea and I'm really upset about their idea. And so I'm going to put it on social media so a bunch of people can tell me you're right. You know? And Jesus says, when you don't feel right, when you don't feel good, I want you to come to me. I want to be your comfort food. I want to be what you go to for comfort. And in fact, by the way, that's a wedge sometimes, even between good Christians and God. We have things that make us feel good, and they become things like God has given us, blessed us with things, stuff, people. And he's like, hey, I want you to know my love through these people, through these things, through these blessings. And all of a sudden, the blessing becomes the thing. And so some people are like, I know people that they lost their spouse, or they lost, unfortunately, their kid or something like that. And it becomes things like, God, no, not God, because you took this from me. And God's like, what you put before me is going to be trouble. I want to be what you go to for comfort. First and foremost, not that you can't go like, oh, babe, I feel awful. I'll tell Elizabeth sometimes like, I didn't feel great about that sermon, that message yesterday. I just, and Elizabeth will comfort me. And she's like, no, it's fine. Nobody was listening anyways. Everybody was asleep after the first 10 minutes. You talked way too long, so don't worry about it. Nobody was there, right? But God says, I want to be who you go to for your comfort. Now listen, let me ask you a question as you go into Christmas. Is God who you go to for your comfort? You're struggling. Things aren't going right. Sometimes God is who you go to for your complaining. God, why are you? How come it's like this? Geez, are you serious? I've done all these things and you just... And God says, I want to be who you go. The way that you go to food for comfort, God says, I want to be that. In fact, there's a passage in the Bible that says, taste and see that the Lord is good. He wants you to try him out. How many people have ever tried food? You're like, I don't know if I like that. Let me try it real quick. And you just sampled it because you're like, well, I want to see if I like it, because if I like it, I'd like to eat the rest of it. Right? He's like, try me. Try me. Stop complaining to everybody else. Stop complaining. Stop going to everybody else. Stop trying to get your joy, your comfort from social media. Come to me. Jesus says, I'm the one that came for your peace. I'm the one that overcame the world. That cake didn't. Your spouse didn't. Your kids didn't. Your pets didn't. Come to me. He wants to be your comfort food. Jesus wants to be your nourishing meal. And see, that's a thing. Sometimes some of us have got the comfort food down pretty well. We're like, hey, when I'm having an issue, I go to Jesus. Okay, God, things aren't right. I better go to Jesus. Like Jesus is the refrigerator or whatever. You're like, I go. When things aren't going well, when the bills aren't going to get paid, when I don't know, when the doctor says that thing's like, okay, I go to Jesus. And you got the comfort food part down right. Jesus is your comfort food. The problem is he also wants to be your nourishing meal. He doesn't want to just be the sweet thing that makes you feel better. Like raise your hand if your comfort food is Brussels sprouts. Stop it. Are you serious? Oh my gosh, get out. That's ridiculous. Sometimes you think as a pastor, I'm going to say this and it's good because I know nobody's going to raise their hand or whatever. And then you always get some people that are like, no, it's me. Brussels sprouts are my comfort food. And it's like, you're killing me, right? Like, no, generally your comfort food, I would say, like, okay, there are some people, Brussels sprouts are comfort food, but generally your comfort food is like something that's like, it's indulgent, it's sweet, it's something like, maybe it's like, I don't eat this all the time, but today, right? And that's the way we treat Jesus, like, I'll come for you for the sweet stuff, I'll come for you for the comfort, but for what sustains me, it's like, I need a better bank account, I need a better job, I need a better neighborhood. Sorry, Jesus, I got to get ahead. In order to do that, I need to cheat a little bit on my taxes. Like we have all kinds of other things that we go to kind of get us through life, and Jesus just kind of only the comfort food. And then that's the thing for a lot of Christians. Like, I'll come to you, Jesus, when I need something. But Jesus is like, no, I want to be the thing that gets you through every day. I want to be your nourishment. I don't just want to be your sweet indulgence. I want to be what nourishes you. When he says, I'm the bread of life, he's like, come, eat of me, take of me. I want to get you through life. And that is an issue for a lot of Christians because a lot of us are like, we know how to go to Jesus when things are wrong, when we need comfort, but we don't know how to sustain our relationship with him. And wherever you go every day and you're constantly with Jesus. You start the day with Jesus. You walk through the day with Jesus. You end the day with Jesus. We have all these other things that we go to make us feel, to get us through the day. And Jesus is like, I want to be what nourishes you. I want to be not just your comfort food, your nourishing meal. Some of us going through this Christmas, we need to take another look and say, Jesus, man, I come to you at Christmas time. I come to you at Easter. I come to you in my moments where I need some comfort. But do I sustain a regular relationship with you? Are you what gets me through the hard times? Are you what gets me through the day? Are you how I view reality and interact with it? And here's the thing, Jesus wants to be your nourishing meal. And then I wrote this other point down. Jesus wants to be your nourishing meal. Like some of us are like, okay, that's true. Like I don't just go to Jesus though for comfort. I also, on Sundays, I come to church. Jesus wants to be the whole thing. Not just a part of your life and your existence. And a lot of times that's the way we run it as Christians. Like, Jesus, listen, you're a piece of the pie. And Jesus says, no, I want to be the whole thing. He says, I'm the bread of life. I'm what gets you through. I'm life. I'm what sustains you. I'm what gives you life. And we're like, Jesus, you can have a chunk of my life. And some of us are like, Jesus, you can have a good chunk of my life. And Jesus is like, no, I want to be the whole meal. I want to be the meal. I want to be what nourishes you. I want to be the dessert. I want to be all of it. And can I tell you something, not to get after anybody or anything like that, but just because that's the way some of us Christians, we're missing out on what Jesus is offering us. You want to have Jesus as a piece. You want to have, how many people like, you blew it and you had something, it's like, man, this is really good and I'm going to eat it again because it was so good. And you put it in your refrigerator. How many people sometimes once something gets in the refrigerator, you intend to eat it, but you just don't get back to it in time, right? How many people ever had something go bad in your refrigerator that you thought, I'm going to eat that, right? And some of us are like that with Jesus. We're like, Jesus, I'm holding on to you. I'm going to keep you. And we put him away. And it's like, you don't get back to him. And Jesus is like, no, I want it to be like, I'm everything. I'm the morning. I'm the afternoon. In fact, in the Psalms, you see these things where people are like, man, I pray in the morning. I pray in the afternoon. I pray in the evening. Some of us are like, I pray sometimes. I pray at church. Jesus like, I want to be with you all the time. I want to be everything. And we're like, well, Jesus, I get some comfort from you. I get some comfort from this. And Jesus like, that's fine. All those things are a reflection of me, but you have to, I'm the giver of every good and perfect gift. I should come first. And I should be everything. In fact, we sing songs. They're like, if I lose everything, it's okay because I still have Jesus. And we sing those songs, we write those songs, but most of us are like, well, I mean, yeah, but not my car. Like if I lost my car, then I'd be really upset. If I lost my pet, my child, my spouse, and we would be upset, but Jesus is saying, I want to be the whole thing. I want to be the whole, as we say it in my culture, the whole enchilada. He wants to be your nourishing meal. He wants to be what comforts you. He wants to be also the healthy stuff. And he wants to be the whole thing. He wants to be, when he says, man, I am the bread of life. Anyone who eats of me, he wants to be one with you. You said that. You are what you eat. It's an interesting thing. The foods that you eat, they literally become you. Your body processes them down and they become the cells of your body. Raise your hand. I know it's not super popular anymore, but raise your hand if you pray over your food before you eat. Raise your hand if you pray over your food. Raise your hand if you pray over your food all the time, even if it's fast food. Raise your hand. Okay, some of you, right? And it's so funny that we do that. We're like, you're about to eat fried chicken. And you're like, okay, God, bless this fried chicken. Take the calories out. I've seen all the studies. I know it's greasy and fat and everything, but it tastes good, so I got to have it. So somehow, bless me with this fried chicken. Some of you are like, dude, you eat McDonald's. I eat McDonald's. What I've come to find out is like a McDonald's hamburger is not even 100% beef. It's a good portion soy. I still pray over my McDonald's. Someone told me, I don't know if this is true, but someone told me, those French fries are not even actual potatoes. And I'm like, I don't care, they're good. But I still pray over it. I'm like, God, bless this food to my body. And like, we say these things like, I don't even know what that means when you're eating McDonald's. Bless this food to my bodies. And he's like, well, I will bless it. Don't eat it. Right? Next slide, please. He wants to be one with us. He's like, you eat of me, take of me, look at my life, drink that in, and let that become you. And like I said before, it's like some of us are running this kind of thing where it's like Jesus is a friend of ours, Jesus is a connection and acquaintance, and Jesus is like, I want to be one. In fact, he prays that. I want them to be one like you and I are one. He's talking to the Father. He wants to be one with us. He wants us to be, that's how intimate he wants to be with us, that we're the same. And another passage of scripture that we've talked about before, it says that you, after you've come to Christ, it says your life is now hidden with Christ in God, like you're just all wrapped up in there. That's the idea in communion, that you're taking this in and Jesus says you're becoming one. Some of us, you're missing out on what God is offering you because you want to have Jesus as the spiritual part of your life, or you want to have Jesus as someone you can run to and comfort or whatever. And he's like, man, I want to be so close. Like, raise your hand if you have a friend, a spouse, a child, I don't know, whatever, but it's like you're super close, you're almost the same person. Raise your hand. Like, my wife, she's best friends with Anna Byer, and they're weird together. Jeremy will back me up on this. They'll get out their phones and they'll start giggling at each other before they even show each other the memes that they're looking at. And sometimes they'll say things and like Elizabeth will say something and Anna will start laughing and giggling before Elizabeth even finishes because she knows where she's going because they think that much the same. And often Jeremy and I are like, shut up. Put away your phones. We're all here together. Right? But they're so close. Like, raise your hand if you can finish the thoughts of one of your kids or your spouse or something like that. Like they say something, you're like, I know you so well. Like we're just, I know where you're going with that. And right. If you're a spouse, you're like, yeah, and that's why I cut them off all the time. I'm like, no, I don't even finish that thought. We're not doing that, right? Because you know, and he's like, I want to be like that. He's like, I want like a thought to come into my head. And you're like, I was thinking the same thing. That's what I was thinking. He wants to be one with us. One. And here's the thing about that you need to understand. He wants to be one with us, but he wants to become who and what we are. He wants to become who and what we are. You know what I mean? Like, so here's the thing. Sometimes we think of Jesus in our current kind of modern context. We think of Jesus like, Jesus is my friend. Like, he is a friend, and he gives some thoughts, and I weigh out those thoughts, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I think I might do that, Jesus, and I might not. like our other friends. Like it's like, oh, I want to become one with you also, Jesus. And we're both in there evenly, both of us. And Jesus is like, no. I want you to become me. Me. Like, you're probably a great person. Everybody says so. But only Jesus is perfect. Only Jesus is the one that never sinned, that loved God and us so completely that he's like, God, I'm not going to sin. I won't give in to that temptation because I want you more. I won't give in to that temptation because I want them to be with us, and I know I've got to be perfect going to that cross in order to be a sacrifice for them. Only Jesus is perfect. You're not perfect, and you're not perfect with a little bit of Jesus in you. And that's sometimes how we think of Christianity. It's like, oh, I've got this life. I'm pretty good. I just need a sprinkle of Jesus, and I think that will make me better. No. Jesus is like, no. I want you to become me. Do you remember the bracelets? What would Jesus do? How many people remember the bracelets, right? And it's so funny because it became cliche. You're like, oh, that's kind of lame or whatever. But it's like, no, that is kind of the sentiment of Christianity. Like you walk into a situation, and it's like, this is what I would do. And Jesus is like, I don't care. What would I do? That's the way you want to walk into a situation. And some of us were so, it's like, well, this is what I would do because this is the way I am and this is how I see things and this is blah, blah, blah. Okay. But you're just you. And Jesus is God and perfect. I have a friend of mine, like, raise your hand if you know some of your own personality quirks that you're like, yeah, that's me. That's how I do things. That's become part of my identity or whatever. Like, some of those things for yourself, right? I have a friend who, I've said this to him, every time I mention certain fast foods that I eat, they automatically, it doesn't matter what I'm saying about it, they automatically do this to me. Bleh. What'd you have to eat the other day? I had this. Bleh. And I told him one time, I was like, you know what? You're not even thinking about that. That's just what you do. And now it becomes this thing. It's like, I have to show you that I don't like that thing. And a lot of us develop those kind of personality quirks where we're like, you know what? I started doing this. That's me now. That's what I do. And Jesus is like, I made you in my image. I want you to be you. But the truest image of you, the truest form of you is me. Jesus is like, I made you in my image. And we're like, yeah, I like that part, but I'm going to have to chisel this and sand that and blah, blah, because I like to be me. And you know what you do. Like certain people, like we dress certain ways because like this is me. This is how I see myself, and this is how I want other people to see me. We talk certain ways. This is how, did it just get dimmer in here? Okay, good. I was like, am I going to faint on stage in front of everybody? That's going to be awkward. And I was almost like, I'm just going to take a couple steps back just in case I do. All right, good. All right, good to know. But we have these things and we're like, this is me. And as these kids are growing up, they'll develop things. They'll cue into certain things. Like there's one thing with one of the little kids that I talk with and play with and everything that she's developing a really sassy personality. But she understands to a certain extent that I like sassy. I like sarcastic people. And so she gives me sarcastic answers and faces and everything. And I think, that's gonna shape your personality. You're gonna become, that's gonna be who you are. And you just, like, I'll say something to her and she'll look at me and she'll just go, like this. And that will become her personality. And we latch onto things like that and we carry them through life. So by the time you get to my age, which I'm like 1 year shy of half of 100. I'm old now. And in fact, my friends are even older. I think my friend Spencer is older than I am. He might be 50, 51, something like that. So he's on the other side of half of 100. But in any event, like you latch onto these things, you carry them with you, and you're like, that's just me. And Jesus is like, yeah, and that's why I want you to eat of me, to take me in, to listen to what I've said, to read what I've said, to hear me when you're praying, so that you can become, I don't want to say not you, the best version of you, which is a reflection of me. He doesn't want to just become one with you. He wants you to become him. Matt, if you can come up. We're going to receive communion this morning. And it's always an incredible day when we receive communion. It's always, it's God saying, I love you. I came for you. I died for you. You're like, yeah, I'm not the greatest person, Jesus. And Jesus is like, I know. That's why I came. There's nothing hidden from me. I know about that thing you did. I know about that thing that you didn't do, but you're thinking. And I love you anyways, and I want to make a way for you so that all those things can be paid for and so that you can be fixed, healed. And so I'm going to go to the cross for you. I'm going to die for you. The night before he would be crucified, the night he would be arrested, he was having the Passover meal with his disciples, and he would take the bread and he would hold it up and he'd say, this is my body, which will be broken. Broken. That's no easy feat. Yeah, he was a human being, but he was also still God. When one of his disciples, when they come to get him, and one of his disciples grabs a sword and lops off an ear of someone that's coming to get him, he's like, we're going to fight for Jesus. Jesus is like, whoa, dude. That's not how this is going to go. Don't you think I could call down legions of angels to fight for me if I wanted to fight? That God said, I'm going to allow myself to be broken for you. He'd break the bread and he'd say, this is my body. It would be broken. He would hold up the wine. He would say, this is my blood. Blood in the Jewish culture, the same way that bread was a symbol of food and sustenance and life. Blood was a symbol of life. You lose your blood, you don't live anymore. So he'd hold up the wine and he'd say, this is my blood, poured out so you could have a new covenant, a new agreement with God. Like you and I are like, how can I make it right with God? And Jesus is like, you can't. You can't make up for the things that you've done. But I can. And if you give your life to me, I will give my life to you. I'll be your new agreement with God. And so Christians, ever since that night, have been taking communion. This reminder of how God loves us, how God has forgiven us, that he came for us, and how deep that love is that he's willing to be tortured and give up his life for us. So we are going to take it again today. We're going to do it a little different. Some of you are not going to like this. Some of you are going to be traditionalists, and you're going to say, what? That's weird. I'm not doing that. Here's the thing. We're talking about this idea in Christmas that you are what you eat. That's part of the idea of communion. You're taking of Jesus, I'm the bread of life, and you're taking that bread of life. We believe that that's a symbol of Jesus. It's nothing, the bread is not magic. You're like, I can only do communion with sourdough. We don't think like that. We think it's a symbol. And so this morning, we're gonna do a little bit different symbol. I asked Elizabeth to prepare kind of like some sweet things for the communion elements. And so there are down here, there's like Hershey's Kisses and peanut brittle and peppermint bark for those of you who like peppermint bark, and broken pieces of candy canes. Because that's what Jesus is saying. This is my life, and it's going to be broken for you. This is my body, it's going to be broken for you. And I want you to take the broken pieces of your life, of my life, and make yours whole. I want you to look at the sweet things that you'll go to all this season, and some of you past this season. And I want you to think of Jesus, who allowed himself to be broken for you. He says, I want to be your comfort food. I want to be your sweet thing. I want to be what nourishes you. I want to be the whole meal. I want you to change the way you look at food. Because Jesus says, I'm the bread of life. I know that's different, and I don't want you to think it's weird or irreverent. I thought about it. I'm the pastor. It's not. I consulted myself and decided it's not. Because I think this is exactly what Jesus meant. You're going to all these things for comfort. I'm the only real comfort. I'm the only one that brings you peace. I'm the only one that overcame the world. How many people have eaten so much you're like, man, one time I went and I ate this thing I loved, and then afterwards I felt horrible, right? And Jesus is like, I'm the only one, man. I want to change the way you look at food, and particularly these sweet foods that we associate with Christmas. But for those of you who are like, no, you're an idiot, that's irreverent. There's regular, the cups and wafers that you can take. For those of you who are like, I'm a traditionalist. Also, I don't like peppermint. But the idea is that Jesus says, I came for you. I'll give everything for you. I'll let myself be broken for you. Even when I'm born, they're going to put me in a manger to symbolize it. I'm your food. I'm everything. That's what we celebrate today, that God who created everything was created by him and for him, says, and you're important to me. You can be one with me. And you're like, but I can't because I'm awful. And he's like, you are awful, but you're also very, very, very special. I love you. Be one with me. So take some time to think about what it means to receive communion this morning. And then when you receive the elements, we don't take them together. You'll just kind of go back to your spot. Some people will come to the altar and you'll pray, but take some time to pray and remember Jesus and what he's done and what it means, particularly during this beautiful season. Would you join me in prayer? Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for giving us your Son. What that means to us. You so loved the world that you didn't just give, you gave what was precious to you. And you didn't just give what was precious to you, you gave what was most precious to you to tell us that we are precious to you. We remember that this morning. We celebrate it. Jesus, we thank you for living the life that you did, for loving us the way that you have, for going to the cross for us and loving us the way that you do. We come to you and we confess our brokenness. We say, I'm not perfect. I'm not a good person. There's not any good in me apart from you. The only good in me is the reflections of you. We confess our brokenness to you and we ask you, let us be one with you. Heal us. Fix us. We take this communion in remembrance of you. Be with us this Christmas season and help us to get the gravity and the weight of it. And when we look at the tree and when we look at the food, and even as we prepare the food, we're like, man, that means more to me because of what you've done, Jesus. We ask these things for your glory and in your name. And all God's people said, amen. If you come down and you receive one of the different elements, there's also just regular juice for you as well.